Hey guys, thanks for listening to Kinda Dating, the comedy dating podcast, where influential guests and I break down the dating world and try to figure out why the fuck do we all have commitment issues. Today's topic is questions to ask before you get serious. Yeah, let's do this. Hello, friends. I'm Natasha Chandel. You're listening to Kinda Dating. I have a great friend with me here today. Guys, you are in for a treat because she is an actress, a comedian. She's a creator of Facial Recognition, which is like a great comedy show for everybody. But I love that you feature like brown comedians and women. Got Fizaa Dosani.
Thank you so much for having me.
What's up?
I mean, we're in Marina del Rey. I can't complain.
Know. Do you want to just give away my address? Do you want to dox me while we're at it?
Just literally thinking, like, should I? Or
it's all
why
good.
did I do that? Why did I say that?
It's all good. I tag that I live in Marina.
Okay.
Yeah. It's okay. It's on Instagram stories, but you know, let's not give the whole thing away. You're like,
the
this
street
street
address,
was so lovely.
Unit number. Not saying it's a unit.
Yeah. It could be, I don't know what's not a unit. Like I just saw a house. Yeah. I think we gave ourselves away with that one. Yeah. It's okay. Fizaa, tell everybody about facial recognition and yourself, like just a little bit. Yeah, glam yourself up, glow up. Go.
Yeah, thank you. So Facial Recognition Comedy is a stand-up show. You've done it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Well, it was awesome to have you. The point of the show is to showcase the diversity within our demographic.
Mm-hmm.
So we started really focusing on women or female identifying comics of South Asian descent, and then sort of growing to include comedians of Middle Eastern or North African descent, because there's not a ton of us. And well, there's more now than before. So we did start this 7-8 years ago, 2017. How long? I can't do the math right now.
Yeah, I know. It's 7 years? No, almost 8 years.
Almost 8 years.
It's 2025 now.
Yeah. So a lot of change has happened in this past decade. But at the time, there were a handful of us, and everyone would confuse each other for everyone else. Like people would get congratulated for someone else's achievements, or you'd have a whole conversation with someone, and then they'd be like, "Good to see you, Zara." And it's just like, no, I'm Fizaa.
Yeah, a whole different human. Yeah.
So that kept happening with a handful of us. I run it with Pallavi Ganalan and Zara Ali, and
love them, guys. Also, like amazing comedians. Go follow them.
Yes, please. And then they're co-producers of the show with me, and we started touring the show. We had a monthly residency in both LA and New York just before the pandemic. So that was pretty neat. Now we're back at the Comedy Store.
Which is so amazing.
Back in terms of a residency, we have one at the Comedy Store, which is, so dope. It is monthly, and it is usually the third Friday of the month. So come see us. And we have men too. Men, they're like an half
there
of
them. Dudes there, I guess.
Yeah, and we, it is a diverse, fun, rowdy show. So, I think it's just, the point is we're not the same person.
No, totally. And I love that. And you guys kind of like you blew up. Hold on. I'm actually going to fix this mic for you.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to give you a little space. Don't worry about it. I know I said talk into it, but don't like be right into it because it'll pop. So just like give yourself a little room, but it's just like in the direction kind of thing of the mic.
All right, cool. I'm like breaking boundaries with this mic.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
You're good. You're good. That's great.
Okay.
I just always I know when you say that, some people are like right there. Like it's okay. All right, we're going to pick that back up. So what I also remember is that you guys blew up during Clubhouse, right?
Oh, that was a fun time. Yeah, no one expected that, I mean, it was just sort of a year of not performing live. And I think there were Zoom shows and stuff. And then this new platform just it burned bright and quickly, but, Clubhouse was a little moment.
It was
a little moment in time. And
I mean, that's how I learned about you. That's how I learned about facial recognition. And then that's how I started. Like, first time doing stand-up was really, I did it like once before in 2019. And then I tried it on Clubhouse, which was
Oh my
so
God.
weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
Because it's like, I remember doing a Laugh Factory competition, but it's like you're on your phone and you're like, I don't know how I'm supposed to say this, but it was a really cool experience.
It was different, and it was a way for, I think, everyone to connect because we were so, I think, deprived of each other. So it was a way to be social again in a way that was deemed safe. But yeah, it was odd. I did like how, I could do a set and just look at my notes or just be lying on the couch. That I do miss.
Yeah.
That I do miss is not having to wear pants
and makeup and 100%.
Yeah.
I miss that all the time. But sometimes I feel like since the pandemic, I've become a bit of a hermit.
I have become quite a bit of a homebody myself. And I think that's because I'm like, I want to enjoy my biggest bill.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is your rent.
It's
Right.
like your home. It's like just the cost of living, and that's where it's the biggest bill.
No, it's true.
And it's like I try to keep it peaceful, like it's my sanctuary.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy being home a lot more.
Yeah. Well, we got to ask you a very important question that we ask everybody on this show, which is single or in a relationship.
Oh gosh, I hate labels. I would say in a relationship, I'm so weird in that sense. I've always been kind of a lone wolf and never wanted to like merge identities. But at this point, I would say I do have a partnership.
Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Partnership.
I'm such a weirdo.
No, I don't think that's weird. I like it. But how long have you been in this partnership?
Okay, so that's wild. So this is someone that I was with for 5 years.
Whoa.
In like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, like a while. So I've known this person, my partner, for 20 years. We've known each other for 20 years. We were together in a traditional relationship for 5. We stayed friends. And then I just unexpectedly got a husky and then unexpectedly got another one. And I was like, oh, I'm a mom. And we just sort of fell into this little family unit because even though I love being a lone wolf, I think having huskies is like having toddlers for the duration of the husky's life. So I don't know. I'm just sort of understanding now the benefit of family and that kind of support. Because before, I think I was very drawn to chaos for a multitude of reasons, which we don't need to get into. I talked to my therapist, or we could, but I talked to my therapist.
It's up to you.
He's an expert on it now. But it's so I don't know. It's just like there's not like a date where it's like, okay, this is when we became official. It just sort of happened organically again. And it's interesting because even after we broke up, I remember thinking I was like, oh, I need to sow some wild oats. But I was like, this is like, I could see myself being back with him at, when I'm older and tired.
That's a good time to consider him. No, it's a part that we don't often talk about. I was actually telling Luis about this the other day where I said, before I met him, I think everybody knows I've struggled with like anxiety, depression my whole life, but the anxiety part a lot. I've been to, I've literally gone to the hospital for panic attacks because they were so strong. And then and so I've learned a lot through therapy how to like manage my anxiety and those attacks. And since I met him, I don't get them. And it was like a weird thing where I realized and same like you, I've always been such a lone wolf, so independent. Yeah. I never wanted to be tied down, but I realized a partnership is nice.
Yeah.
For your mental health. In a healthy partnership is nice for your mental health.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I'm really grateful. Now I have anxiety about life and work, but I don't have
opened
that,
you up to new anxiety.
Yeah. But I don't have that just walking anxiety that I had all the time.
Yeah.
Because you have somebody to share like the load with, because life is like heavy.
I think, I just sort of after, getting these dogs, I just didn't have the luxury to be as self-destructive anymore. It's like I have to show up for these animals. And to do that, I have to show up for myself. And it's hard to earn a living in this industry in LA by yourself and take care of everything and be able to get your 10,000 plus steps and eat right and work and so it's like
and meditate, and you're like, I have no time to do anything.
So just to sort of, just have someone to share a life with, there are benefits. I think there's pros and cons to both.
Totally.
I talked to a friend who's married, and he's like, yeah, marriage is boring. Happily married, very happily married. But he's just like, that's sort of the nature. And what I've learned from therapy is that sometimes a healthy relationship is supposed to feel kind of boring.
100%.
Safe, supported, loving.
The easy stuff, like, when I was in unhealthy relationships, I was always my friend's like crazy dating story person, like I was the one. I mean, this podcast, they've heard a million of these stories.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was even telling Aisha, who's my co-host often, and I was just like, man, I feel like I'm having an identity crisis. Like, am I the boring person now? Like, who doesn't have crazy stories to tell?
Yeah.
But it's good for your life.
Yeah.
Terrible for content. Great for life.
Yeah. There's something about intermittent reinforcement that's so addictive. I mean, that's the basis behind gambling. Like, you get validation and then it's taken away and then you get it back. And that really, really can, I think, feed addiction. And sometimes those relationships with less available people mimic that whatever goes on in your brain with intermittent reinforcement. So it is addictive.
Yeah.
And the highs are high, but that's the thing, is there's always going to be balance. So if the highs are highs, the low are probably going to be lower.
Super low.
Whereas if you have something like stable, that's not a bad thing. If you just sort of
100%.
feel good, it's okay to feel good. And that's so, like, looking back, I was like, oh, wow, maybe I didn't, maybe I wanted to feel somewhat unsafe or something, like maybe there was something in me that, maybe I've been able to work through, where I just, maybe like, I think emotional availability was scary to me. And I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but it makes sense now looking back in retrospect, like the partners I chose and how even when, with my partner, when, our first go round, when, I never stopped loving him, but I think I wasn't ready to sort of settle down, I suppose.
Yeah. No, and timing is like a big thing, and like where we are in our life, it matters for sure. Again, if I met Luis like a year before, I don't think it would have worked out.
Yeah.
So I completely get that. So this episode we're talking about like questions to ask before you get serious with somebody. So like it's an interesting perspective because you're in a partnership. You say that you kind of fell into it because of the dogs, but I know you and I know you're a really smart person. So I don't think that you would just like be in something to be in something.
No.
So I'm curious for you, like, how did you sort of know or decide that this kind of person or relationship was worth moving forward with at all, to even like share huskies with?
Yeah, I mean, I trust him. I know I can trust him because it's been proven over time. So this is a person who wanted to stay in my life, even when at the time I didn't have romantic interest. He's just been sort of like a rock. So I think I think it takes time to really get to know someone. And I don't, this is 20 years, this is 2 decades with someone who knows me well. And you can't just, that doesn't just come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like so I think there's a lot of, I appreciate that a lot, is just, I know the content of this person's character. He's a good person. I can trust him. I can see him being a good dad.
That the actions matched up, right? Like somebody kept showing up for you over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's something like we talk a lot about, where people are like, oh, when you know, you know. And I'm like, I don't think it's like a momentary thing. I think it's like somebody showing up for you over and over.
Anyone I felt immediate animalistic attraction to immediately, it's always a recipe for disaster. It's always a recipe for disaster. And I think I've learned that too from just personal development stuff I've done, therapy, et cetera, is that it's sort of confusing what love is. Lust is very exciting and fun, but love is, I think, something more steady and stable, and that's just something I'm learning, It's still, there's still parts of me that, I don't know, are like, just, like there's sacrifices on both sides. Like, I think being in a relationship too is compromise.
100%, which is so crazy. Okay, so I don't know if you saw it, but I did this silly dance video on Instagram last week, and it was white parents' advice, which is marry someone you love, and Indian parents' advice, which is what is love? Marry someone who makes a lot of money, it looks decent, has a good job, doesn't have like crazy family medical history, comes from a good family, loves their parents, makes good money, saves good money. And then like your horoscopes match, and then love will come. And I wasn't like, we're comedians. Like, I was just saying it as like an observational thing. And a lot of people also came at me of like, you're saying one is better. I'm like, dude, I didn't say anything is better. I think both are equally important. Love is important, but love is definitely not enough. And I think like when you're choosing a long-term partner, like you said, love is often lust for people. Mm-hmm. And so they get those two things confused, and then they're surprised when, their values and long-term behaviors don't actually match up.
Yeah. And
for me, it's like, I think that a lot of people don't use critical thinking in the early stages, of the relationship.
Get lost in the sauce.
Yeah. And I don't blame people. Yeah. Like, you get caught in your feelings. And because of that, we kind of become passive players. Mm-hmm. So we're just like, oh, wow, I hit 2 months. I hit 3 months. I hit 4 months. I hit 5 months. And suddenly like 2 years has passed, and you're like, it's great. But you never asked them real questions about their values, their lifestyles, their behaviors that would actually affect your relationship long term. And so that's kind of what this whole thing was about, which is how do you figure out the right questions to ask? How do you do it correctly? Because I think there's a way. Yeah. And kind of like get what you need for a lasting relationship, not just a long relationship.
Yeah. I mean, that takes communication skills, and everyone is sort of, at their own place with how they communicate. And some people, if you don't communicate in the same way and can't find a way to level with each other, that's going to be very hard, especially when and if chemistry wears off. And then, you're, if chemistry is not and it's never as exciting as it is in those first 2 months. And then after 2 years, it's like, then it becomes work, truly. But if you don't have the chemistry and the compatibility, mm-hmm. Once the chemistry is sort of like, you're left in reality, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to use the word chemistry anymore, but like those early
endorphins
feelings
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Of lust. It's sort of like you're high. So what happens when you come down and reality hits? And then you're sort of have to look at everything else that you may have been able to ignore when you just felt so good being around that person.
Yeah, and I think we all did that like when we were younger for sure. Like
Yeah.
I didn't ask any questions when I was young. Or even if I did, like I just didn't listen to their answers.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe their answers. Like I always tell this example of like I dated a guy once who told me he had rage issues and never wanted to get married because he got divorced. And I was like, "Oh my God, he's so sweet for being honest." You know, like the person's literally telling me why they're a walking red flag. And I'm just like, no, but he was authentic.
Yeah. You got to learn. That's how you learn.
Right?
Is by, you know, how are you born knowing this? You know, unless.
Totally.
I mean, especially because our parents didn't date like that.
No.
You know, so they don't
But
know.
somehow those fucking Desi parents like knew to ask a lot of these fucking questions.
Well, because they were very practical.
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe we have the luxury of not being practical, but it's, you know, the family unit, I think, is a mode of survival.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a unit. It's a pack. So,
and I really appreciate that word because I know when Luis and I were like right before we were getting married, that was my conversation with him was I wasn't specifically like, oh, I want to get married. I said, I want us to be a unit because it felt like you're living together, you're doing all these things, but you're splitting everything 50-50. And it felt kind of like a roommate. I was like, I don't get why this is like, my practical brain doesn't get why this is different than when I used to have a roommate.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I want our lives to be like a little more infused, but I couldn't figure out like how. And then the fucker asked me. So I was like, oh, I guess that's it. But he and I also talk about this, that like I asked him a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Like
smart.
From the beginning of our relationship. Of course, like you said, doing this podcast has taught me a lot. So I like know a lot of things to ask, but I knew the like really important stuff I wanted to know right off the jump.
Yeah.
And then I kept continually asking questions to him until like we got serious, where I was like, okay, I feel comfortable that we are aligned.
Yeah.
For this to be serious. And again, it doesn't mean that every single thing is in alignment, guys. It's just this idea that like the things that are most important to you, how do you make sure that you guys are on the same page? Because those are the problems that like occur in relationships later.
I mean, I think earlier in my relationship, I wasn't that smart with that. Because I wasn't thinking.
Yeah, but you were
about the
like
future.
You've been like 20 years on and off. Like that's hard.
Yeah. So I mean, I think what's helped us is having a foundation of friendship. Before we were friends first, and then it's funny. I actually pursued him, and then I was like, oh, so it's my fault.
But you brought up a good point, right? Friendship, like, why is that really important? If you break it down, it's not just because like, oh, we're friends. What does a friendship give you? It gives you honesty, like authenticity, right? Like I can say, I know my friends, they're good, bad, ugly because there's no like stakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I love my best friends, but like they go back to their own house at the end of the day, you know? And so it's like, so because of that, you can like get to know somebody at a deeper level.
Yeah.
Because there's no like veil.
Yeah.
Like we're not putting your best foot forward. You're just like being your asshole self with your friends.
Yeah. Your friends, a friend is someone you can be yourself with. And I think part of getting closer to someone is seeing them more fully and accepting them as they are. So friendship is a good foundation. Whereas like, you know, if lust is the foundation, then do you even really know the person? Yeah. You don't even need to know the person. Yeah. you're, you know, the person can be a total fantasy. And you could be a total fantasy to them. But
and I'm curious, like, so for you, as you were kind of developing or getting into your partnership, like what were some of the questions that maybe you asked or maybe didn't ask, but noticed that person giving you the answers? Do you know what I mean? Like either through their actions or what they said or how they behaved.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is I didn't really ask questions. I just sort of found myself in situations. And then if I wanted to go with it, I kind of went with it. But in retrospect, I mean, questions specific questions. Well, I think time is what sort of lets you see someone's character. So in terms of specific questions, just I guess whatever comes up, but maybe it really comes down to your values. Maybe it's sort of being clear about what you want, because I was never clear about what I wanted, because I didn't know really what I wanted. But, now if I were to do it over again, knowing what I know now, I would just be very sort of, I'd be honest about myself, more on it, like just, presenting myself, not presenting myself as wanting to be attractive to the person, but like, this is who I am. And then I just I would try not to feel uncomfortable asking a question. That's a red flag, I think, when you feel like you can't talk to a person. So
huge red flag.
Yeah. So, if I did have a question that is whatever it was, it's, if that triggered the person, then that's something to look at too. That's information. It's like, oh, well, why can't I ask you a question? We're getting to know each other.
I think it's interesting though with you because again, like you've been on and off for 20 years you've known this person, but 5 years together. So I think there becomes a lot of gray. I'm sure you don't even remember some of the things that you might have like asked him as a human being to know about him.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are like specific questions for people to ask. And listen, this depends on your age too, right?
Yeah.
At 20, you're not going to ask the same questions that you are at 30, that you are at 40, that you are 50 or 60, right? But I do think that there are some that are like important across the board. And you have to weigh out, like, for the listeners, what things are most important to you as a human being. So if that is like, for some people, it's kids, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
that's where my mind went too, because there's a window if you want to biologically have kids, even adopt. It's harder to adopt as you get older.
Yeah. But like for you, animals, right?
Yeah.
Like, are they? You would never be able to be with Luis. He's allergic to dogs and cats. Super allergic to cats. Allergic enough to dogs, but not as bad.
Yeah.
So like dogs love him, so they're always all over him, but he can't pet them too much because he'll get whatever, right?
Yeah.
So for us, it had to be like, we had to have a conversation early on of like, I was like, oh, are you a pet person? Not a pet person. I wasn't totally decided. But then he was like, I can't. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not like married to it. So I was like, okay. But we, I think the kids thing, wherever you stand, like I had a really good friend, two of my really good friends dated, which another issue, but they dated and like they were together for like a year and didn't have the conversation of kids. And he was a hard no on kids and she wanted kids. And I was like, how are grown-ups? Like, you didn't ask that basic question? And I yelled at him. I'm like, why the fuck didn't you tell her it was like a hard no for you?
Yeah.
And he was just like, well, she never asked. And I was like, okay, so what, were you going to wait till you guys got married and were about to fuck and then be like, hey, but I'm going to keep putting on a condom forever because I don't want a kid. Like, so that ended their relationship because she was trying to see, is there any gray area? Is he open at all? And he was like, nope.
Just hard no.
And that matters, right? Like, so like for Luis and I, one of the important questions was God, which is like, I believe, and I didn't need them to believe.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, like, do they believe in anything? Like anything. To me, like just, even if somebody's atheist, but they believe in like, I believe in myself.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. But when somebody's like a nihilist or like for me, it's like, like there's no reason for anything. We're just here and we're going to die. Doesn't gel with my way of life.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be like a believer in God. But I was like, yo, I just want you to know I believe in a higher power. So like, don't get weirded out by that.
Yeah.
And then, but like my best friend, she's like, cannot be with somebody who's an atheist. It's like a hard pass for her.
Yeah.
So those kinds of questions are important to know sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because like the way you approach life is going to be different.
Yeah. I mean, if you put a lot of time, invest a lot of time into a relationship, then find out that, you're at an impasse, like it would be, maybe you could have saved yourself some heartache.
Yeah.
Asking that question up front.
And those are like, of course, the big questions, right?
Yeah.
Even something as simple, again, like guys, if you're in like your 20s and you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't really know that myself. Like something simple as like travel.
Yeah.
If you're super into travel and the person you're with isn't, I promise you're going to build a lot of resentment with that, because I've had a bunch of friends who dated people who couldn't travel for like citizenship reasons. I had other people who couldn't travel because like they had a fear of flying, and it caused a lot of problems in relationships because one person wanted to go somewhere, another didn't. My mom and dad are the same. Like she loves going places. He's a hermit. And like he wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't want to step outside his house as much as he can. And so it's like she kind of resents him a little bit for that, because she wanted to travel the world and see the world and now she can't. And so like that's an important thing in your 20s when you're free and want to be able to like go see the world and you want to have a partner to do that with.
A lot of these things comes down to compatibility, and you can feel the attraction, but if you don't assess compatibility, then you can run into a few surprises where it gets messy because you're invested in the person, you're attached to the person, but there's incompatibility with how you want to live your life, what you want. That's tough. That's very tough.
Yeah. But like you said, these are like some of these things can be tough conversations, but like they don't have to be these like heavy conversations, guys. Like the idea of when you're doing this, and I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, to me, I feel like you ask some of these questions in the early parts as you're just getting to know them, but like not an interrogation. Not like on first dates. So do you want kids? When are you, what's your timeline? Like that kind of shit.
That's to see if you like the person.
Yes.
That's the first impression.
Yeah. Like
clock's ticking, but it's not ticking that fast. Like
exactly.
Take a breath.
I think being a comedian helps like for people like us, because we know how to like infuse humor into conversations and it not feel so heavy.
Yeah, you can disarm someone, lighten it. If it gets awkward, a laugh will always sort of make everyone feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah. Because I remember when I met Luis, he was in advertising. That's his day job. But at night, he's like a techno DJ.
Yeah.
And I had a rule before, which was like no musicians, no athletes. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm breaking the fucking musician rule. But I was like, he's hot and has a day job. So like, let's see.
Yeah.
But I remember on our first date, he was like so chill and calm and whatever. And I was just like, yeah, he's a techno DJ. Like, I'm sure he's like drugged up. And I wanted to know because it doesn't gel with my lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I was immediately going to put him in like fuck category, And so I asked him, but I did it as like a joke. I was just very casual, like put my arm back and I was like, hey, so like, what kind of drugs have you done? Like I was just like, do you do a lot of weed? Like when you do, and then he was just like, oh no, I don't do anything. And I was like, get out of here. But I acted like I did it.
Yeah.
So that he would tell me
if
he did. And I was like, come on, you got to have done something. And he's like, I've never touched any drugs in my life. And I was like, get out of here. And I was like, even I have. And then he was like, no, I haven't. And then he was like, what have you done? And so, but like and then same thing with drinking. He never drank. But like all of that came out on our first date. But I did it in like a very gentle, jokey way where I was just like acted like I was into it.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. I got a guy to tell me that he was into like polyamory because I made it seem like I was on a date. On our first date, it was like going really well. It was like 3 hours. And then I was like, I was like, let me get some of the red flags out of the way. And so then I just was like, hey, so like, are you into like open relationships or whatever? And I literally did it in that tone of voice. And then he was like, yeah, I mean, my dream is always to like be in like an open relationship. I'm like into, poly. And I was like, oh, because I'm not. And then he was like, fully backtrack. No. But like, I didn't mean with you because like, I really like you. And I was just like, no, you told me, but thank you.
Yeah.
And that was great. And I appreciate the honesty. So like, I think that there are ways to like ask questions, but those things like will definitely affect your long-term compatibility.
For sure. I think that's just smart to get the information. I wasn't always smart and didn't always get the information, but
I think you did in time, right? Because
for
like,
sure. I mean, there's no,
again, you're really smart. I know you. And it's like, you're not sharing two huskies that are your babies with a rando.
No, absolutely not.
That doesn't have whatever you're compatible with. And also
he loves those dogs.
Yeah.
As much as I do.
Exactly.
And so I know that they're in good hands. And I love those dogs. They're my babies.
I can
those are my kids. So it is very, very important that, that they are taken care of.
Yeah.
If something were to ever happen to me, I would want those dogs to be with him.
Of course.
So,
but that shows you like somewhere along the way, he's told you he's reliable.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get into this one, which is finances.
Oh, okay.
Which is like money. Because I'm sure you're like, okay, this person is stable enough to take care of these dogs and provide for them, like their basic food and medical expenses. Because that shit, I don't care what anybody says, unless you've been poor, that shit matters.
Yeah.
They don't need to be rich, but I think they need to be stable.
Yeah, I think so. It makes it a lot easier. I mean, I've definitely had relationships with people who were not stable, and doesn't make it easy. So you have someone, it's just one less thing to worry about. And I mean, it's just at this point, I don't want to have to support a whole other person. Like, you want a partnership. So someone who brings something to the table. And that reliability, I think, is something I do appreciate more now as not an older person, but as someone who's older than I was.
Yeah. Hold on, we're gonna pause a second because I'm gonna get my laptop charger.
Okay.
The whole thing can keep running.
Oh my God, you have Seed of the Soul. I love that book. You have Seed of the Soul. Seed of the Soul?
Oh, yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah. I was in a very self-help phase, for long, many years in my life.
I mean, if you don't help yourself, who's going to help you,
But I think it definitely, all those books taught me a lot.
I was thinking about rereading that, actually.
Oh, yeah. It's a good one.
It's been a while, but...
I was thinking of rereading some Wayne Dyer books.
Yeah, I saw you have a Wayne Dyer book right next to it.
I have all of them.
Well, let me know if you have any good
Eckhart
recommendations.
Tolle is my favorite one.
Oh,
That's my, I would say my personal growth Bible.
Yeah.
But it's also the heaviest one.
Which one? The
New Earth.
I haven't read New Earth.
Oh, life-changing.
Yeah.
I've read it 4 times.
I have,
but
what's
it's
the other
heavy.
book I have? Yeah.
The first 50 pages is boring.
Oh, it is?
And then it gets really deep.
New Earth.
A New Earth.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, I
like
that
Eckhart Tolle. Too.
Oh, yeah. I love that one. Okay, we're going to jump back in. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, because I think the finance part is the one people get the most weirded out about, but I consider the most important.
Yeah. Because
they also say finances are one of the highest predictors of divorce, or one of the biggest causes of divorce.
Yeah.
And it's a question that you can ask guys, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, right? Because in your 20s, the question you would ask is you would talk about student loans, and you would be like, hey,
yeah,
this is what I have, or just your general conversation around it, and see how much debt the other person has, which I know it sounds so silly, but
it's practical.
You are going to take on that person's debt in their life.
That is true. I mean,
what?
especially if you
the shit
make it
nobody
official.
told you when you were a kid is once you're married and taxes happen and the other person doesn't pay their debt, you are responsible for paying their debt.
Now, you know, our Indian parents talked about finances.
You
That's
know?
that's not what people do when they're dating here,
No.
it seems. But like my parents were, my mom especially was always, still now, like always in my ear. Like she does not want me to marry a broke person. And she's made that very clear. But I think it comes down to like, it's the practical stuff of like, what will you be able to have a certain quality of life, et cetera.
And listen, again, I don't mean to be like a weird fucking prude about this, but I was that person who said none of this matters. I was the one who was like, it's only love. And my parents used to be like, you're an idiot. Like you need somebody who makes money or stable was the thing. And I was like, money isn't everything. And then I became poor. And then I was like, oh no, wait, fuck, this shit is really important.
got you some perspective.
Yeah, right? Like my parents cut me off and I was like fucking dirt poor in college. And right after college, I was like poor. So I was like, I can't take on somebody else who would also not like be together. And again, guys, it doesn't mean they have to have money. It's just like, I think the idea of debt is, okay, they have debt. What is sort of their relationship with money? Are they a person that is like YOLO? You know, they're just going to spend and be spendthrifts and it doesn't matter because you only live once? Or are they people that are like responsible and going like, hey, I don't make a ton of money, but I put this much away to pay my student loans every month, and then I budget for a vacation in a year.
How do they manage their resources?
Yeah.
Because at some point, if the relationship progresses, it's going to be shared resources. And I mean, there's been people like, you know, you have everything you've worked for now in this bucket of stuff, of finances that you guys may share. And, you know, what if you just look at your account and it's gone and you didn't know that he was spending the money or whatever? Like that's a shock.
That's exactly it. But also like even when you're dating in a relationship, you just want to know that the other person is being responsible because like you would just be surprised at how many people find out that their partner was in like, I had a friend who found out that her partner owed like some insane amount of money to the IRS.
Yeah.
And it's like, that affects your relationship because then that person can now not focus on your relationship. They're focusing on paying their bills and, you know,
it's a big fish to fry. There.
It's like, I also think, you know, risque one, but I do think your sexual interests matter. Yeah. And I also think like, you know, I coach clients and they're people who are like super asexual.
Yeah.
And so if that's you, then you probably need to discuss like, where are they on a level of 10? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and again, guys, don't make this like so prescriptive, like on a date, you're like, so from 1 to 10, what's your sex drive? No, it's just like—
Are you a super freak?
Yeah. It's just like having conversations about things and like letting little information come out in these general conversations you might have. But I remember I went out with the guy and he told me, he asked me what the craziest thing I did was. And I was like, oh, I know this. That means you're about to tell me the craziest thing you did. Yeah. So I was like, go ahead and tell me.
Yeah.
And then he did. And then I was like, okay, cool. Just like, so you know, I'm not into that. I'm okay that you are, but I'm not. And then he was like, yeah, totally cool, blah, blah, blah. Like 6 months in the relationship, then he was like, hey, I want to do this. And I was just like, pretty sure I told you right in the beginning I wasn't into that. So
I don't want to get peed on. That might be the first thing I say if I ever, you know, am in a position where I go on a date is don't pee on me. I don't want it. I don't.
Yeah. It was cute when R. Kelly did it. No, I'm kidding.
Not into choking either.
Yeah.
I'm asthmatic.
Yeah. Listen, and if you choke, it's like, it's got to be a light choke, you know, not the like,
not an actual
you're closing my jugular vein. Like, But there's some people who do that. They're like, I'm like, oh, your hand's on my jugular vein.
I know. I feel like I've had enough recovery now where like I don't need to like feel like I'm dying to feel something.
Yeah.
It's like I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah. But listen,
I
a
like
little
breathing.
bit is okay sometimes. But again, everybody's
whatever
spectrum is different, right?
Whatever floats your boat. I'm very live and let live.
That's exactly it. So it's like this idea of like figuring out what is important to you and asking those kinds of questions. So family was really important to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't be with somebody who's like not close to their family at all. So that was something that I would kind of gauge a little bit. And the way I would do it is like, oh, how often do you talk to your parents in a week or whatever? Like, but very casually, as something is happening.
You're
like
really
maybe my
good.
I'm very good.
You're really good with those questions.
Yeah.
Like,
I ask a ton.
I feel like I need to take notes.
Oh, I ask everything.
I wish we had this conversation 20 years ago.
That's why we're doing this podcast, guys, so that you can ask these questions. But listen, I know it's a cheat because I used to be a journalist, right? So I'm good, and we're comedians. Like we do crowd work, we ask people questions and we know how to do it in like a not so serious, heavy way. Like Luis had no idea. I was like, okay, getting information.
Yeah. It was an interview.
Yeah, but like now he knows it.
You did it in a way where it's dating, because that's what dating really is.
Dating is. Exactly.
It's getting to know each other. So questions are natural.
Yeah. And that's what brings me back to that first point, right? A lot of people don't do that. They're just like coasting in their relationships and going, it's only like as long as there are no problems, the relationship is fine. And that could be fine for a time being. Yeah. But if romance and love were enough, like we wouldn't have as many divorces as we do.
A lot.
I think it's like a balance of both. You need that love. You need that romance. You need that chemistry to also hold you together. But then you also need like to know that this person is like a half decent human that works for your life.
I mean, now, that's not something I was maybe thinking about 10, 20 years ago. But now it is super important that someone who's going to have access to my vulnerabilities and my home and my puppies and all that stuff. It's like I want to know that the content of their character. I don't want them to I want them to be someone I can trust. That is important to me now.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Finally.
I got there. You're boring.
I know.
You are officially boring.
Oh my God, it used to be so exciting. So exciting. And but yeah, that self-destructive stuff is not sustainable.
No, it's not. And like nobody wants to live like that forever. That's just the truth.
I probably would have taken it as long as I could have, but I think I ended up falling into a situation where I have dependence and I'm like, oh, my priorities are different now.
I just love how you talk about your dogs.
I love them.
You're like, they're
so
my dependents.
They're I wish I could write them off on taxes as dependents, because they really are. Like, it's such a big part of the budget.
Yeah, of course. And they're two big dogs.
Big.
Yeah.
My bigger one.
They probably eat more than I do.
You're teeny. Yeah, my big one, when he stands on his hind legs, might be taller than you.
100% taller than me.
He's a big boy.
For sure he is.
90-something pounds.
Yep, almost me.
50% of that's his head. Yeah. His head's so big.
They're giant dogs, man. I don't know how you take care of them. That's crazy.
I just, I've always been an animal lover. And I think part of that has been my recovery is now I can be more emotionally available to, I'm in a place where I can be more in a relationship, can have pets that, I can do right by them.
Yeah.
So that's just, I think, a testament to, getting healthier and getting more boring.
Yeah. I also think and guys, this is not a question necessarily to ask your partner, but it's my last thing is I do think it's important to get into a fight before you get serious with somebody.
It's good to know, how they fight, how they argue, what that looks like. Because, because some people fly off the handle, there's rage. And it's good to know. It's part of just getting to know the person. And you can't get to know a person overnight.
Yeah. I mean, so many relationships have ended after the first big fight. And that's for a reason, is because like the way people fight says a lot. And I mean, I was living with somebody before, my ex, and we never fought. But we got serious. And that's what I'm saying, guys. I never asked these questions. I was just sober, like, let's just go with the flow because it's going so well.
Yeah.
And I just assumed the fact that we never fought meant we were so good.
Yeah.
But when we did fight, it was horrible. Horrible. And then it ended the relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it also ended the relationship that he cheated on me with grandmas. But
with grandmas?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Your grandma?
No. No. Thank
Someone's
God she's
grandma?
in a different country. I thought he was hitting on my mom at one point, but he somebody else's grandma. He was into seniors. Yeah. Yeah, you've heard it. I've talked about it in my stand-up, but I'm like, that's a real story. And that was that ex. And
How'd you end up with the grandma chaser?
I mean, how did I end up? Because I didn't ask these questions. That's how I ended up. I didn't fucking ask. Actually, I did ask. Do you know that? I did ask, and I said like something about what's the oldest to the youngest you've dated?
Yeah.
And
you
then
think of everything.
Yeah, I always ask questions. And then he like told me that he had dated older women, but that it was just a phase and it went away. And so then I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And like didn't think of it. And again, it was like the person was telling me exactly where they were. And I just was like, oh, I mean...
Yeah.
But at that point also, what can you do? I trusted the guy. He said that it was a phase and I was like, okay. And I didn't think he was literally into seniors.
So if I'm ever again like put in a position for dating, there are going to be two questions. Are you going to try to pee on me? And are you going to try to fuck my grandma? Like, or someone's
and number 3, are my dogs going to be dependents in your health insurance?
Are you going to be a father? Can you be a father? Can you step up and be a father to my dogs? I
love it.
Like a dog freak.
You are a dog freak.
I am a dog freak.
It's okay. It's okay. Fizaa, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Yay. I'm glad that you liked it. You're not totally done. We do something called 6 questions.
Yes.
So we ask every guest the exact same 6 questions.
Okay.
Fizaa, are you ready for your 6 questions?
Let's go.
It's like rapid fire, okay? Don't think about it.
Okay, I won't think.
What is the first thing you notice about a potential partner?
Like physically? Maybe they're
however
teeth.
You perceive it.
Teeth hygiene, oral hygiene,
breath. What is one deal breaker?
One deal breaker? Someone who just does not respect boundaries, like has a pattern of not respecting boundaries. Like, ugh.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What turns you on?
Drive. I love drive. Someone who wants to like better their self, their situation, but in a way where it's healthy. Well, I don't know. I'm probably also attracted to an unhealthy level of drive, but we're working on that. You know, we're working on that. Balance.
Balance is key.
That's what I'm trying to move towards.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. What are one of your strengths and one of your weaknesses in relationships?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so strength, I would say my maybe emotional intelligence, because I've done a lot of work in that area. So I kind of, it's like a different language. So it's like a different language I've studied. So I can interact with a lot more awareness now than previously. Weakness, I'd say emotional unavailability, because sometimes, you know, if my cup's not full, I'm not going to be able to be there for other people. I have a lot of my own, I don't want to say demons, but a lot of my own stuff to deal with. And I think, sometimes, you know, if it's harder for me to be there emotionally if I feel like I'm going through something. So that's, you know, something I think it is what it is right now. And I'm, you know, I'm in therapy. I'm actively working on.
I love that. Yeah, it's fair. Totally fair.
Thank you.
What is love?
Love. Oh gosh. The fabric of the universe. Accept the connection between everyone. You know, like romantic love is just such a small piece of what love is. Like it's just a little drop in the bucket. I think love is a state of being and just the inherent connection between people and the deepest of love is accepting someone exactly as they are in the moment.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
You're so wise. Your last question, besides I love you, what 3 words would you want your partner to tell you?
Maybe I support you.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm acing this
you
test.
aced it. You're such a good Daisy.
Yes.
Fizaa, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How can everyone find you, facial recognition, all your fun stuff? Plug
Oh
it
my
all.
gosh. Well, you can just Google. But I'm on my social media. I'm at Fizaa Dosani, FIZAA and then that's on Instagram and Threads and Twitter X, all of those. And then same thing, facial recognition comedy on Instagram is actually the best way. We're also on Facebook. Facialrecognitioncomedy.com, FizaaDosani.com. If you Google either one of those, you'll find something. You'll get some information.
And everything will be in the description of this episode, guys. So make sure that you follow Fizaa, facial recognition, and all their fun stuff. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, we're also on social media. Follow us at Kinda Dating across the board. I'm at Natasha Chandel on Instagram and Facebook, Natasha.Chandel on TikTok. Thanks so much for downloading this episode. If you like something you heard, make sure you screenshot it and tag us on social media. Finally, I know it seems tough out there, but just try. Till next time.
You can do it.
You can do it.
We believe in you.